Hello, BookTube. It's day 6 of Nonfiction November, an event created and hosted by Jemma at Nonfic Books and Olive at A Book Olive, uh, in which they encourage you all to read more nonfiction. And I've been enthusiastically participating because nonfiction has meant everything to me. I love it intensely, and I've been making recommendations for the last 6 days of nonfiction authors, some canonical nonfiction authors, and some who maybe aren't canonical anymore. Uh, and the aren't canonical anymore category definitely applies today, but you don't have to watch the video. It's up to you. Because today I want to recommend Gerald of Wales. I'm afraid he's another churchman, just like Bede. He was born in the 12th century and he was Welsh. And like Bede, he came from a certain amount of money. But unlike Bede, he came from much more money and also a long family full of not only royalty and quasi-royalty, but deacons and archdeacons, bishops and archbishops. He was in a perfect position, in other words, to fast track a career, and that's what he did. It wouldn't have helped him at all if he hadn't been whip smart, and he was. So it was a perfect combination. And eventually, through his career in the church, traveling, globetrotting, trouble spotting for various very powerful churchmen, he developed a problematic relationship with King Henry II of England and his sons. Uh, you could definitely accurately say that Gerald of Wales was attached to the Angevin court, but it was a prickly attachment at any time. Uh, he wanted advancement in the church that he didn't end up getting. He still had a stellar career, and the whole time that he was riding on sweaty horses on cold Christmas mornings and carrying leather satchels with sensitive documents and standing in rooms with the most powerful people in the Western world at the time, the whole time that he was engaged in that work, he was also going home to his room and before hitting the pillow, writing. He wrote for his whole life, and then as with Bede, and he wrote more the older he got, and as is the case with all three of these medieval monsters that I've been mentioning, Saint Augustine, the Venerable Bede, and now Gerald of Wales, we have an enormous amount of their work. They crossed the Terminator, really, the three of them do, between the age when we couldn't expect a large amount of an author's work, even a popular author, and the age when we could. The age when copying had increased to the point where we were almost certain to have almost everything they wrote. That's really neat. I began these recommendations with Roman authors and Greek authors who, in some cases, we have only a fraction of what they wrote. And oh my God, don't get me started on the dramatists. That's where your heart really breaks when it comes to ancient literature. But that stops being true around this time. Around the time when literature starts to revive in the West, starts to regain a foothold, and people start copying works, finding works, writing their own works, then we get graced with much larger bodies of work by great thinkers and writers. And Gerald of Wales was one of those. He was extremely popular in his day. You could call him a best-selling author, although the nodes for distribution weren't really there. You could still call him that. People who wrote and read books knew his name, and he knew that they knew his name. And he'd fought his whole life, not physically, but he was constantly fighting for advancement. He was constantly fighting to overcome any off-the-cuff dismissiveness that might have attached to his Welsh origins. He was a pugnacious person. He strikes a very holier-than-thou, communion wafer wouldn't melt in my mouth type tone in a lot of his liturgical writing. But he was a very pugnacious person. You couldn't be otherwise and rise in favor with the Plantagenets. And it's reflected in his writing. Gerald of Wales is best known for two works, really. He did sort of a quasi-liturgical, quasi-ethnical, quasi-cultural travelogue of Ireland and of Wales. They're very good reading. they're fascinating, especially if you love either one of those countries or both of them. Uh, but they were only a fraction of what he of the whole body of what he wrote, most of which we have. That whole body contained, like with Bede, an enormous amount of scriptural writing, and interpretation, and exegesis, all of which is wonderful, and also a large number of saints' lives. Gerald of Wales really mastered the art of saints' lives, and if you study them, if you read them with an open mind, without letting yourself get bogged down in the piety, the liturgical aspect of them. I know it sounds a little strange to say read a saint's life without caring about the liturgical aspect of it, but nevertheless, you know what I mean. If you read them as exercises by a very smart man in writing biography, then they become even more fascinating. And good luck reading them, because they're largely gone. I just remembered that I haven't shown you a picture of Gerald of Wales. Let me call that up while I natter. As in the case with Bede, so too in the case with Gerald of Wales, what I would really like is a new edition, an edition that is big and that has all of the book on Wales, all of the book on Ireland, and then great excerpts from the large amount of other stuff that he wrote, all of which is fascinating if it's translated right, because the translation is important here, because Gerald of Wales, like I was mentioning, was a pugnacious person, and it comes through in his writing. The modern equivalent that I'm all, whenever I read him in the original, the modern equivalent I'm always struck by, and it's not forced. It doesn't. I'm not trying to find it. I'm always just instinctively reminded of it. Is Gore Vidal. For a number of reasons. This was a world-weary person who thought the world would be better if he were given all the power in it. This was a person who had seen everything, done everything, knew everyone famous, and who had mastered the art of a barbed edge to his prose. No English translation of anything that he ever wrote that I have ever read has captured that edge, or even seemed to know that it was there to capture. So like Bede, Gerald of Wales is waiting for his great translator, I think. Even now, in the 21st century, after all this time, I think he's still waiting for it. This is a selfie that he took in the bathroom near the castle where he was born. So today, for my Nonfiction November recommendation, even though I just said that the English language translations don't really capture him, for most of you, I'm guessing they'll be the only game in town. And there is one. They're all out of print now, I think, but there have been Penguin Classic translations of a couple of the Wales book and the Ireland book. As far as I know, no one maybe even in the whole of the 20th century has bothered to translate any of his religious writings at all. It's just, if you went back in time to his room and you said, you will still be remembered in 1,000 years, he would have said, well, maybe I will be. That's not totally unbelievable. And then if you'd said, but no one will remember anything that you wrote about religion, that's not why you'll be remembered, he would have, what? So that's unfortunate, but even so, and even though the English language translations that I have read of his works aren't outstanding, he's still worth your acquaintance, even through a glass and darkly, even muffled just a bit. He's still worth recommending. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm recommending Gerald of Wales. Some of you who've known me for a while in real life will be shaking your heads knowing that this day was coming. But it's over now. We are done with my triptych of literate churchmen in the Dark Ages. And we move on from here to sexier, brighter lit stuff. But anyway, I'll see you soon, book 2. Thank you.